Ladies and gentlemen, it is October 6, 2025, and I am owner of Lion Speaking Agency and your favorite Purple Heart veteran, David Kendrick. And I wanted to talk to you guys about a very serious case of veteran suicide that happened on New Year's Day, something that is near and dear to my heart and the reason why I started advocating for mental health. And this is the suicide of Special Forces soldier Matthew Livelsberger. He died in a Cybertruck explosion in front of Trump Tower New Year's Day this year, 2025. He was a Special Forces soldier, and he died in a Cybertruck. There was an explosion, and after this happened, a lot of people, including his girlfriend, started to dig into his life and found out that he was just stressed after coming back from the battlefield. Being a special forces soldier is something that I inspired to be when I was in the military. I was a 19 Delta, a Cavalry Scout, and I got injured very young in my career. But if my career would have went the way I wanted it to go, I would have tried to become special forces, Delta Force, anything just to go above and beyond and fight on them front lines as hard as I can with the most elite units out there. And you have to see a lot of stuff when you're on these front lines, especially as a special forces soldier. You have to do a lot of fighting. I didn't deploy to Afghanistan. I was shot in Iraq, but in Afghanistan, it's very hard urban fighting. Very hard urban fighting the Taliban. But what I want to get into is my case of just mental health, what I think he was going through, right? So when I was 19, I went to Iraq. The average age on the battlefield was 19 years old. I deployed during the troop surge, 2006 to 2008, when the war was at its highest, at its peak. So let's talk about the brain. If you're a brain, if you study the brain, if you're a psychologist, I would love to hear about this in the comments here. But I'm going to talk about my case. When you're young, like a teenager, your brain isn't fully developed yet, right? So I was given a M16 and a bayonet at 18 years old and taught how to kill 2 weeks after graduating high school. Think about that. Think about the brain. What that just your brain is so it's not even nowhere near being fully developed. So I had 2 weeks as a civilian because I graduated late. I graduated high school in August. I was at Fort Knox in September of 2005 learning how to kill. Then I went to war at 19 years old, and then I got shot at 20 years old. So you have all this damage, well, not damage, but your brain's being conditioned to kill, right? The reason that I joined the Army as a Cavalry Scout is because of the stuff that I saw in the home, in my house, and then being on the streets in Rochester. You see violence every day anyway. That's why it was so easy for me to join as a Cavalry Scout, because you're kind of conditioned to seeing that violence. Then we go off to war and we have to kill, see death, and come back and try to shut that off. And it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen automatically. So there's a fine line that we have to walk between trying to be who you were before combat and who you are after combat. There's times right now when I could smell something and be like, man, that smells like Iraq. When I got shot by a sniper, I had to go through this very intense therapy called EMDR because my PTSD came from getting shot by a sniper. I couldn't see the person's face who did it to me. So anybody who spoke Arabic could have been the sniper. And your brain develops these weird scenarios that are 0% likely to happen. But in here, it can happen at any time. So, with the case of Matthew coming back from Afghanistan and seeing all that death, having to take lives and things like that, reports are coming out that it just ate him up. It ate him up, and So when I got back, I got shot. And the very next day, my best friend was shot and killed by a sniper. And then my unit, the 361st Cavalry Regiment, deployed to Afghanistan. And they were ambushed. And I lost a very good friend, Michael Scusa. Griffin, who was also in my platoon, died along with, I believe, 6 other guys. But when I got back and I got out of the military, I noticed that there was something that changed when I got home. I didn't have any emotions anymore at all. And I had all this anger and aggression. And I started to box to get some of that out because I always say, right, when you get back and you have all these feelings, you're like a bomb that's going to explode, right? And the people closest to you are the ones that are going to get hurt. When I got back, I noticed that I didn't have any feelings besides anger toward everybody. And I didn't feel anything, not even toward myself, engaging in some very dangerous behavior, not caring about anything. I had something that I call Superman syndrome, because when you get shot by a sniper, I got shot and the bullet hit my femoral artery, it broke my leg, it hit my sciatic nerve. All these doctors are telling me there's no reason that you should be alive. It kind of goes to your head a little bit, like I am here. I did survive. Now nothing can kill me. So I had no feelings toward anybody. I was boxing to get out my aggression, and sometimes when I would box, it would be to train, get some good training in and all that stuff. And then other times it was just to beat somebody's ass to get that aggression out. And it continued. It was very hard to date because I was going through these long gaps of time when I had no feeling at all toward anybody, including myself. And this all led to me one night drinking 2 bottles of Bacardi and trying to commit suicide, right? And everybody was like, "Oh, this is just a cry for help," or you need help, but we don't know how to get it to you. And I actually made a video called "Cry for Help" in 2010, and I made this song. I used to rap. I made this song about it called "The Itch," about feeling like a person with no emotions, no feeling, no emotion, no feeling, no soul, no nothing toward anybody. And it was really hard to date because I didn't love anybody. And so girls are like, "Man, what's wrong with this dude? What's wrong with you?" And they could tell that something was going on. And I would tell them, "Hey, I thought they were just really big mood swings that would last for weeks at a time." But I would go about 2 or 3 months without feeling anything toward anybody. So I moved down here to Atlanta. And when I was 27 years old, man, I went to the VA and I was continuing to go to my therapy and stuff like that. And I said, "Man, I don't feel anything toward anybody. I want to get a vasectomy because I feel like if I have a child, I'm not going to love it. I'm not going to be able to nurture it and give it the love that it deserves." That's how bad my emotions were at the time. It was like being a human without any soul. And it would go from 2 weeks at a time. And then it would last sometimes 2 months. And then it was like 2 or 3 years that I didn't feel anything toward anybody. I was just sleeping around in the streets, going to all these places, not even knowing where I was in Atlanta. And ended up getting a vasectomy when I was 27 years old because I didn't feel anything toward anybody. And I could think about Matthew, all these things that he felt, that all the stuff that he saw on the battlefield, and trying to get back to the Matthew that he was before he had to take lives on the battlefield or lose his friends. And it's hard, man. It's hard. That stuff, the stuff that you see and that you're trained to do, it gets drilled into your head every single day. Like I said earlier, when I was 18 years old, I literally went from the classroom to getting a bayonet and killing in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks. And Matthew was 37. I just turned 38 and still not normal. I don't think any of us are ever going to be who we were before we deployed, went to war. And so for me, when and if you're, like I said, I think I said this earlier, if you're a psychologist or something like that, and you study the brain, please let me know something in the comments here. Luckily, by giving these speeches and things like that, I was given a keynote in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and somebody said, "Hey, it sounds like you have this," and she wrote something down, a diagnosis down on a piece of paper, and I said, "That's it. I don't care what any therapist says." I said, "This is what I've been feeling. This is what the diagnosis is. This is what I feel. This is what I feel." So with Matthew, I don't know if he had nightmares or dreams or what his reality was, but for me, getting shot by a sniper, there was a high rise called the Montage that I used to get my gas at in a Kroger parking lot. And I used to, looking at the high rise, think that I was going to get shot again. Because, I don't know, it was just something about being in a wide open parking lot, and it kind of mimicked the day that I was injured. And I would get hot and almost feel like I was getting shot again, and my brain would have to take me back to it would take me back to the day that I got shot, and then I would have to do something called grounding. Just go like, you're not in Iraq, you're here, you know, say the date, say the time, you're at a gas station, you're at Kroger, you're here, you're in DeKalb County, you're not in Iraq. But that would happen multiple times. And not saying that's what Matthew's reality was, but you just never know. You just never know. And I could say, as a special forces soldier, he saw way more combat and did way more than I did, right? But you just never know exactly what somebody's going through that could lead them to suicide. Now, I'm giving my lived experience, and I can only imagine what Matthew was going through when it comes to his mental health. And you can talk about it. You could take medication for it, because I was haunted by nightmares as well. You know, I was on tramadol to help me get to sleep, trazodone to help me stay asleep, all these different medications that I was drinking with as well, because you want to try to take the easiest way, the path of least resistance, to help you get over what you're going through. And so that's why a lot of veterans are alcoholics or addicted to opioids or whatever your substance of choice is. But in this case here, I know in Afghanistan, I lost friends, and the Taliban, those guys fight really, 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 really hard. And having to take a life, man, it changes you. You're never the same person before you're never the same person you were before. You have to do that. And then the way that our deployments were back then, you would get a year back in the States and you have to do it all over again. A year back in the States and have to do it all over again. So you have veterans who, before they're 25, they may have 3 combat deployments under their belt. And the brain is just getting impacted by death, mortar rounds and IEDs and things that, these TBIs, these traumatic brain injuries that have just profound impact and damage on the brain. If you think about the NFL, I think it was Junior Seau that shot himself in the heart and committed suicide because he wanted people to study his brain, because he knew that there was something wrong with him, right? Because in the NFL, they had impact over and over and over again. And now they have these Guardian helmets to help reduce some of that impact and the damage to the brain. But when it comes to us, we have advanced combat helmets, ACHs, Kevlars. Never know what that impact does to the brain. When I was 19, I wrote this in my book, Calvary, we hit them. We got mortared all the time, right? And I got mortared and boom, had a concussion. My eardrums got blown out because a mortar round exploded right outside the bunker that we were in. And I don't know what impact that had to my brain. Don't know why I was the way that I was after I got injured. Why I didn't have any emotions or feelings toward anybody. It could have been because of that. Who knows? But I'm good now. But with Matthew, don't know exactly what he was going through, what his reality was that made suicide a viable option for him. But it happens more often than not in our community. I'm glad that the number now is not over 20 veterans a day committing suicide like it was at the height of the epidemic in our community. But with this video here, I just want to share a little bit about my story, what Matthew may have been going through, and if there's a psychologist or somebody who studies the brain, just share, to talk a little bit about what happens to the brain when you see violence growing up, and when you have to experience all this violence and see all this death and go to combat over and over and over again before your brain is fully developed, because the average age on the battlefield was 19 years old. That's all I have for now. Felt like I was rambling a little bit, so I'm going to end this now. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is David Kendrick Jr., owner of Lion Speaking Agency. Leave me a comment down in the bottom, and if you want to know more about me, you can go to www.dkendrickjr.com. Leave me a message there, and let's talk about me talking for you.